narratives cannot be defeated by merely deconstructing or rejecting all grand narratives or theories. For the purpose of liberation, oppressive grand narratives may be countered by emancipatory grand narratives. Let me clarify my point by a brief return to Marx. In the Communist Manifesto, Marx makes the following claim that we're all familiar with. And I quote Marx now. The development of modern industry, therefore, cuts from under its feet the very foundation on which the bourgeoisie produces and appropriates products. What the bourgeoisie therefore produces above all is its own grave diggers. Its fall and the victory of the proletariat are equally inevitable, end quote. In this case, the bourgeoisie are the masters, the owners and managers of the means of production, even the production of ideas, norms, values, and grand narratives, and social contradictions. And these contradictions are necessary for the protection of the master group. However, they also represent cracks in the system, unrest among the victims of history, human ruins, grave diggers. The age of history is an ongoing struggle between the master narratives as a means of control and the possible forms of resistance produced at each stage. However, resistance is impeded by a smoothing over of these contradictions. The contradictions are not recognized by the victim because of the containment of dialectical thinking. Social reality is understood only in terms of the facts. However, Marcuse and many of the postmodern theorists remind us that all social facts are produced by other social facts that are concealed by the master narrative. Marcuse's form of dialectical thinking functions at a macro and micro level. Even the fragmentation that postmodernists are concerned about is a product of a system or a process that either fragments or smooths over fragments and difference. The system, the master narrative, fragments if that is what is necessary to maintain the system. It also conceals its fragmentation if that is what is needed to maintain the system. The astute social theorists must be able to recognize and analyze these two distinct processes. The astute social theorists must also recognize the liberating potential that is also produced in this process. The system always produces grave diggers. The problem has been how to awaken the grave diggers, ruins. While postmodernism has made enormous contributions to our understanding of the human condition, it has become politically paralyzed by its own refusal to occupy the prophetic position. It has refused dialectics. Marcuse's prophetic dialectic must be revived if we are to get beyond postmodern political paralysis. The prophetic dialectician is aware of the ways in which the system of domination perpetually reinvents itself. However, every new stage of domination requires the recognition of the possibility of liberation at every stage. Although the grave diggers are not yet digging, they are there, and their shovels are nearby. The prophetic dialectician never ceases her attempt to awaken the dead. This cannot be done in the absence of theory, but instead it requires the recovery of theory. I argue that a recovery of theory requires also a recovery of Marcuse and his form of dialectical thinking. Thank you.
One thing people don't realize about emperors is that you can't really make a pronouncement as an emperor unless you have a little boy or little girl standing by to strike the gong after the pronouncement is made. And so it's really the gong boy or the gong girl who has to See, that's the real, it's sort of like Zizek, isn't it really the other way around? That's where the real power is. My paper is, I'm realizing now, sort of a footnote to what Jim and Arnold said, and I want to thank them for having me on the panel with them. Thank Harry and the other organizers for putting on an excellent conference, and also to thank Jim and Arnold for being excellent roommates, which doesn't always happen. And in fact, I have a whole system for determining the categories of people I will room with, and it worked out very nicely. I'm very about that. I don't know if you guys have ever watched, I'm Bill Martin, by the way. I'm Jim's colleague at the Paul University in Chicago. I don't know if you've ever seen Pastor Melissa Scott on TV. Have you seen her? She's extraordinary.
Her father was great.
Her father was a, no, wait. Who do you think is her father?
Oh.
Gene Scott, right?
Yeah.
He is not her father.
Oh, really?
He was her husband. Yeah, this is a whole story.
He used to be on 27 hours a
I could
day.
spend all the time, he's 20 years older. I could spend my whole paper time just telling the story of Pastor Melissa Scott, Gene Scott. If you haven't seen Pastor Melissa Scott, I recommend it highly. It's right up there with back when Jimmy Swaggart had the big cathedral and he carried a Bible that was this big and literally would bang the Bible and he would laugh and he would cry and he would play the piano. Very credible musician, sing, very good singer. Pastor Melissa Scott, she fills these whiteboards with Greek and Latin and Hebrew and Portuguese, just languages she's just pulling out of a hat, and interpreting them. It's like in the end, it's totally crazy, but it's this amazing hermeneutics lesson. And then what I love about her, she's very pretty, but she's also very humble. Like she's like John Rawls. This is one reason I like John Rawls. He was amazingly handsome and yet extremely humble. And Pastor Scott, at the end of her sermon, she just says, and that is my message, and she just walks off the stage. People are giving her standing ovations. She pays no attention to it whatsoever. And it's a great performance. I'd recommend it highly. But I'm going to begin by giving my message at the outset, which again I think is a bit of a footnote. And it's really in two parts. One is that I hope Derrida's work will be part of our work as social theorists for some time to come. And I'm going to try to give some reasons why I want that to be the case, and why at least some of us I hope will keep going down these pathways. And then second, and these things came up in many of the talks here, I think the hard problem, so to speak, in normative social theory can be characterized as trying to establish the ethical core to politics, but without going over to mere moralism, as was said in the earlier session today, or the mere, and I like this phrase very much, the mere pleasures of condemnation. And I know I partake of these pleasures often, but I'm also aware of their limitations. And I think Derrida is actually somebody very good for helping us with this. And if you don't mind, I just make an advertisement. I wrote this long book that I'm trying to get people to notice called Ethical Marxism. And unfortunately, my publisher, like many publishers in academia, it has experienced the economic crisis like many have, and so they're not really doing so much to get it out there, but I'm happy to be a huckster for it and try to get it out there. I think that hard problem, so to speak, actually does map on to what in analytic philosophy is called the hard problem, which is to try to explain the material mind and mental causation as material, which is a very difficult thing. I tend to follow Donald Davidson in this question, but this fellow, Owen Frank, has some very interesting things to say on this recently. Okay, so my paper is The Persistence of Deconstruction